Hello everyone, this hour on Verbling, the next in my great short story series. We're continuing our short story 20, The Egg by Sherwood Anderson. So we're going to do a little summary of what we've read and talked about so far. We're going to continue reading, and as we go along, we'll discuss the story and work on pronunciation and things like that. That's a little bit about the class, a bit about me. Verbling teacher for this hour. I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. By the way, here are 3 quick rules to help you participate in my class. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up, which means turn off your microphone when you're not speaking so we can keep the classroom quiet. Tune in to the new words that you're learning when you are speaking so I can correct you and give you feedback. And finally, open up to your classmates. Relax and have fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. And that's a little bit about me and a bit about the class. And for those of you who weren't here before, whoops, let me get the camera in the right place. For those of you who weren't here in the first class, it might be good to do a quick review. First of all, can everyone hear me okay? Because yesterday the Hangout was a little bit buggy.
Yes, we can hear you. Good job.
Yeah? Okay, fine. I think that sometimes when Google updates or Firefox or Chrome updates, not all the plugins update at the same time. So I think that's what was happening yesterday. Anyway, first of all, let me share my screen with you. This is our story, and you will find that in the link that I posted for you. Hold on. No, I didn't post it for you. Let me post it now. So you'll find that in just a second in the Verbling chat. Here we go. Whoops. 1 second. Story. Okay. So you've got the link now in the Verbling chat window if you want to open it or download it. And if you don't see it, just go to the group chat inside the Hangout, and it looks like this. All right. And when you open it up, you'll see that graphic. And I need to open one more file now that I think about it. I'm going to read you a little description. First, I have to open this. I'm going to read you a little description to start thinking about the theme that we discussed last week. Then we'll do a quick summary, and we'll start reading. Give me just a minute to... I've got to open a file here on my computer to read you this. Give me just a second. One moment. Okay, let's see if I have this. I've got to go to my Verbling folder. Great short stories folder. Give me just a second, almost there. And let's go to short story 20. Sherwood Anderson. Okay, that's opening. Give me just a second, almost there. Okay, this is what I wanted to read for you. Give me a second, still loading. Slow as always. Okay, this is it. Do I have it now? Is it? Yeah, I think so. Almost. Wrong link. Hold on. Okay, now I got the right link. So, this is what I wanted to start off with. Last week I showed a picture of a fresco in hang on just a second here. I'm just gonna mute you for a second, Luo, because I'm getting a lot of noise, okay? You already muted yourself, okay. Just because we're hearing lots of traffic and stuff. Okay, this is what I wanted to read for you. Last week, first of all, let me show you the picture quickly. Last week I shared this image with you. You'll see it in just a second. Whoops. And I asked you to talk about it. Tell me what it brought to mind, what you thought about. This is an image of a fresco inside of a what was called a cave. It wasn't really a cave. It was just kind of a chamber. And this kind of painting was called a grotesque. Grotesque from the word grotto. So it has the same root. Grotto means cave. The reason I was talking about that, hopefully you could see that image okay. The reason I was talking about that was because one way to look at Sherwood Anderson's stories is in terms of something that he called the grotesque. And I want to see if I can find this definition that he used. I'm just trying to find the right link. I keep opening the wrong link. Maybe this is it. Hold on. So it seems to come from something that he wrote that he didn't actually publish, called the Book of the Grotesque. So let me see if I can just read this section for you here. When Anderson submitted a manuscript, which is called Winesburg, Ohio, so a set of stories based around a place in the United States, kind of an everyday, not everyday, but a kind of a typical small country village town in the United States, Winesburg, Ohio. So this was the name of a manuscript. But the original name of that book, which he's famous for, was called the Book of the Grotesque. And the publisher changed the name of the book. He left the title of the introduction the same. So Winesburg begins with a sketch that is not about Winesburg or the character, George, but about the concept of the grotesque. So this introduction is maybe important for us as well. Here's basically what it said. The sketch at the beginning of the book describes an elderly writer who hires an old carpenter to raise his bed somehow so that he lies there, he can look out the window. The old carpenter tells the writer of his experience in the Civil War, and as he talks, he begins to cry. The weeping old man is ludicrous, yet he remains the writer. He reminds the writer of the many sad people whom he had known during his lifetime. He realizes that all of them are, quote, grotesque or grotesques, and he decides to write about them. He explains their grotesqueness by suggesting that each of them seized onto one truth and tried to live by it. But the truth which each embraced became a falsehood. So in this introductory sketch, Anderson suggests one of the unifying devices of that book, which is to follow, for most of the characters of Winesburg are grotesques or distorted in some way. Like the carpenter, which seems eager to tell someone about himself and about each of them, he often chooses this particular character in the story, George, because he is a writer of sorts and he intends to become a fiction writer. The sketch, like many of his stories, takes place in a room, a symbol throughout the book, not only of security and warmth, but of isolation and entrapment. Well, I just wanted to talk about that for a minute because maybe that will help us understand the story that we're reading, The Egg. And there's a lot of parallels between that image I showed you, the image of the grotto, the grotesque fresco, which is in a kind of a chamber, which they call it a cave. They suggest it's like a cave. And the idea of being in a room or being inside of something and having a view to the outside, even if it's a distorted view. So just wanted to point that out because maybe it'll help us understand what we've read so far. let me just ask before we begin. Yuki, do you think you could say a word or two about the story for the people who weren't here in the last class? I think you were here, and Abraham, I don't remember if you were in the class, the last class on Thursday. I don't think you were. I can't remember.
I wasn't here. Sorry.
You weren't. Okay. So Yuki, we only read the very beginning. Do you think you could give us just a brief summary of the very beginning of the story for those who were not here?
Okay. In this story, story
Can you hear me, Yuki?
Can you hear me?
Can anyone hear Yuki, or is it just me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Now I can. Okay.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. This story tells about the father or mother of narrator. Narrator's father was before he was a farmhand. He just enjoyed the life. He worked hard and just enjoyed the his life. Every night maybe. Every Saturday, he went to the bar and drink alcohol, and on the whole, he satisfied his life. But after that, but 35 years, he married narrator's mother, and narrator's mother have some kind of ambition, which Americans often have. It is
the American dream.
The
American dream.
Another word, it's American dream. It's a success. It's a passion, American passion for getting up in the world and take up possession of the world. So mother inspired father to embark to leave their job as a farmland, as a farmhand, and embark on a new job, new work,
new direction, maybe.
New direction, yes.
That's more or less where we left off. What was their new direction? Do you remember?
They begin to raise hens.
Right. That's basically where we left off. So all of the things that Yuki was describing, they're kind of we don't get to see all of that. It's basically we're told about the backstory, and we're told through the point of view of this narrator who's talking about his parents. So it's a lot of backstory, but it's basically given to us as description. Okay?
And narrator also describe the miserable life, miserable, awful, and sad life cycle of hens. It is a very awful destiny, very awful destiny await him. He in his young age, many of them have a dreadful disease. Many of them die, and after they survived, even after they survived, they just bear the eggs, and after that they are killed. So they compare, maybe after compare the life of hens with people.
Okay, so let's stop there for a second. Let me read that part, the one that you just described, because it's quite important in the story. I'll read this, then we're going to go around the room and continue reading. From my screen, it looks like it's Abraham first, and then Eric, and then Luo, and then Shafar, and then Yuki. So we'll keep picking up paragraphs in that order. Let me just do the first one, it's a review for Yuki, but for the rest of you, it's a good introduction. So this paragraph is something that Sherwood Anderson does a lot. He seems to be taking a moment out of the story and describing something which almost seems out of character, but it's very symbolic. So it's a strange passage, but it's interesting. So you can follow along on screen. One unversed in such matters, in other words, one unversed in such matters can have no notion of the many and tragic things that can happen to a chicken. So this is the guy talking about the life cycle of a chicken, and it seems to become symbolic in some way. It is born out of an egg. It lives for a few weeks as a tiny fluffy thing, such as you see pictured in Easter eggs, on Easter cards, then becomes hideously naked, eats quantities of corn and meal bought by the sweat of your father's brow, gets diseases called pip, cholera, and other names, and stands looking with stupid eyes at the sun, becomes sick and dies. A few hens now and then a rooster, intend to serve God's mysterious ends, struggle through maturity. The hen lays eggs out of which come other chickens, and the dreadful cycle is thus made complete. It is all unbelievably complex. Most philosophers must have been raised on chicken farms. One hopes for so much from a chicken, and is so dreadfully disillusioned. Small chickens just setting out on the journey of life look so bright and alert that they are in fact so dreadfully stupid. They are so much like people. They mix one up. They mix you up, in other words. They mix one up in one's judgment of life. If disease does not kill them, they wait until your expectations are thoroughly aroused and then walk under the wheels of a wagon. Chickens have a rough life. To go squashed and dead back to their maker. Vermin infest their youth. Vermin are like foxes and things like that. Vermin infest their youth, and fortunes must be spent for curative powders. Later in life, I have seen how a literature has been built up on the subject of fortunes to be made out of raising chickens. In other words, farmers had to buy lots of books to figure out how to raise chickens without all these problems. It is intended to be read by the gods who have just eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is the hopeful literature and declares that much may be done by simple, ambitious people who own a few hens. Do not be led astray by it. It was not written for you. Go hunt for gold on the frozen hills of Alaska. Put your faith in the honesty of a politician. Believe, if you will, that the world is daily growing better and that good will triumph over evil, but do not read and believe the literature that is written concerning the hen. It was not written for you. Wow. Strange, huh? So, apparently he's got very strong feelings about chickens and their life cycle. Okay, so keep in mind what we talked about with the grotesque. Keep in mind this passage about the cycle from chicken to egg as we read. And Abraham, you're going to continue with the next paragraph here.
Okay. I, however, digress. My tale doesn't primarily concern itself with the hen. If correctly told, it will center on the egg. For 10 years, my father and my mother struggled to make our chicken farm pay, and they gave up the struggle and began another. They moved into the town of Bidwell, Ohio, and embarked in the restaurant business. After 10 years of worry with incubators that didn't hatch,
Wait a second. Incubators.
Incubators. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't hatch, and with tiny and in their own way lovely balls of fluffed that passed on into semi-naked fatherhood, and from that into that henhood. We threw all aside and packing on our belongings on a wagon, wagon, I don't know how to pronounce.
Wait, and packing our belongings on a wagon.
Okay, and packing our belongings on a wagon,
Drove.
drove,
Yeah, I've got to hear those V's. Drove. Yeah.
down Greek's road toward Bidwell, a tiny caravan of hope, looking for a new place from which to start on our upward journey through life.
Yeah, their upward journey through life. They've just left the egg, and they've just hatched, and they're going to start a new life. I don't think I don't think it's an accident that they're going to have an upward journey, or they think they are. What does embarked mean? Is that clear? Embarked in a restaurant business, Abraham?
Embarked? No, not really.
Well, in that sentence, try to use the synonym. What's the word that means the same that would make sense in that sentence? They moved into the town of Ohio, blah, 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 and did what in a restaurant business? What's a synonym? A word that means the same but simpler. Say again?
Work.
Not just work, that's too general. They began a restaurant business. They started it.
Mm-hmm.
So embarked means to do something new. Embark means you're getting on a ship and you're leaving the port. You're embarking. So it's like a new voyage. Clear?
Okay, clear.
So the new voyage is that they started a restaurant. So after all this time on the farm, they started this new business, this upward journey, the restaurant business. After 10 years of worry with incubators. What's an incubator, Abraham? Do you know what an incubator is?
I have a feeling about it.
What's your feeling?
When you are inside something and the outside world doesn't affect you or anything. Maybe.
It's true. So here, the incubators are for the chickens, for the eggs. So after all that time, so the incubator is a machine that protects the egg and allows the chicks to hatch from the eggs. So it's really literally an incubator. It's a machine that lets the eggs hatch. It's warm. It has the right environment, as if so it's supposed to be more efficient than having the eggs just under the hen or something like that. So it's literally an incubator. With their incubators for human babies as well, especially when they're born premature. Okay, and finally, this word pullerhood, no one knows this word. So pullerhood, the past into semi-naked pullerhood, and from that into dead henhood. Well, he's making a joke. Henhood would be adulthood because they're hens when they grow up. Pullerhood would be childhood. Why the word puller? It's some old word that we don't use anymore. So it just means childhood for the chicken.
Okay.
All right, so basically the gist here, as we discussed, is that they started a new life in the restaurant business. That's basically it. Eric, why don't you take the next paragraph? By the way, where are you from, Eric?
Hello, I'm from Czech Republic.
From the Czech Republic. Okay, great. This is your first class with me, right?
Right.
Okay, because I don't recognize you. Okay, why don't you take the next paragraph?
Okay. We must have been a sad-looking lot, not, I fancy, unlike refugees fleeing from a battlefield. Mother and I walked in the road. The wagon that contained our goods had been borrowed for the day from Mr. Albert, Grigg's neighbor. Out of its sides stuck the legs of cheap chairs and the back of the pile of beds, tables, and boxes filled with kitchen
Wait, utensils.
Utensils was a crate of live chickens, and on top of that the baby carriage in which I had been wheeled about in my infancy. Why we stuck to the baby carriage I don't know. It was unlikely other children would be born and the wheels were broken. People who have few possessions cling tightly to those they have. That is one of the facts that make life so discouraging.
Discouraging. What's another way to say discouraging, do you think, Eric? What's a simpler way to say that? To make life what? Is discouraging a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Uh-oh. Look, if it has dis
Yes,
means
this. So that means that it's making worse.
yeah, exactly. So it's a bad thing. So people who own few possessions cling tightly to those they have. In other words, people who are poor hold on to the little bit that they have. They hold on to it. They bring it everywhere. It's one of the facts that makes life so discouraging. That makes you feel like giving up. So this narrator, he's a real happy guy. Life is discouraging. Can you picture this? This paragraph? Can you picture what's going on? Where are they and what are they doing? Can you picture it in your mind, Eric?
They are just starting their new life, I would say, or
Yeah,
just going
true.
through the obstacles.
Uh-huh. And what are they actually doing physically in this paragraph?
Um, mm,
If you're not sure, take a look. Look at the second sentence here. Can you see it?
Mother and I walked in the road.
Yeah. So they're literally walking to their new life down a road. That's what they're doing physically, right?
Yes.
And how do they look walking down the road? What do they look like? Do they look normal? Do they look strange? What do you
They
think?
look maybe strange because they have these cheap chairs and tables and boxes, everything.
Yeah, they look awful. they've got all their possessions and they're poor, so their possessions aren't great. And then they've got one possession which is especially strange, which is this one here in blue, right? Why we stuck to the baby carriage, I don't know. So they brought the baby carriage, his baby carriage. Well, he's obviously not a baby, and his parents aren't going to have other children. So it's just strange, right? Why are they carrying that particular thing? So I think it's almost symbolic for some reason. It's like the egg that he came out of is being carried with him for no particular reason. Hard to say. But anyway, it's a strange scene. Okay, Luo, you're going to take... oh, yeah, you can do the paragraph. It's not that long. From Father Road.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Luo. Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Father rode on top of
Yeah.
the wagon. Yes, I can hear you now. Okay. Father rode on top of the wagon. He was then a bald-headed man of 45, a little fat, and from long association with mother and the chickens, he had become habitually silent and discouraged. All during out 10 years on the chicken farm, he had worked as a laborer on neighboring farms, and most of the money he had earned had been spent for remedies to cure chicken diseases. On Wilmer's right wonder cholera cure or Professor Bedblow's egg producer or some other preparations that mother found advised in the poetry papers.
Wait.
Advertised.
Advertised.
Advertised. There were two little patches of hair on father's head just above his ears. I remember that as a child I used to sit and looking at him when he had gone to sleep in a chair before the stove on Sunday afternoons in the winter. I had at that time already begun to read books and have notions of my own. and the board paths that led over the
Bald path.
board,
Path
board
like
paths.
street. Yeah.
Yeah, board paths that led over the top of his head was, I fancied, something like a broad road, such a road as Caesar might have made on which to lead his legions out of Rome and into the wonders of an unknown world. The tufts of hair that grew above father's ears were, I thought, like forests. I fell into a half-sleeping, half-walking state and dreamed I was a tiny thing going along the road into a far beautiful place where there were no chicken farms and where life was a happy eggless affair.
Is his life a happy eggless affair for you, Luo?
Life was a happy eggness. Yes, I don't have to care about egg. Yeah.
Good. It sounds like when you do, your life is very difficult. Um, uh, so, what do you think he's doing? He's describing himself as a child, right? What do you think about this description about his father's bald head? It's a little bit strange, isn't it? Have you ever,
Yes.
when you were a kid, did you imagine things like this? Can you picture a kid doing this?
No, I hadn't. I haven't.
It seems a bit strange. Um, what about this part on the top? What do you think about the names of the remedies? First of all, what's another way to say remedy? Let's always try to find a simpler word when we have difficult words. Luo, what's a simpler way to say remedy? Can you give us a
Medicine.
synonym? Medicine,
Medicine.
right, right. So it's medicine to cure chicken diseases, right? What do you think about the names of these medicines? Wilmer's White Wonder Cholera Cure and Professor Bidlow's Egg Producer. What do you think about those names? Do they sound like good products to you?
No. No, it sounds not like good products. And the how can I say?
I don't know.
Exaggerated. Oh, sorry, I forgot that word. Ex, oh.
Exaggerated?
Exaggerated. Yes.
Okay.
Posted.
Absolutely. So it sounds like his parents, they left their horrible life as farmhands. They went out to make a restaurant, but he's remembering when they were still farmhands, or I don't know if they were farmhands. I think they were the owners of the farms. So they weren't farmhands actually. They owned the farm. But it sounds like they were deceived. They were duped into buying expensive things that probably didn't work. So it sounds like they were taken advantage of. Or maybe everyone was, right? Because people the United States was an agricultural country until the Second World War, basically. We were basically separated from the rest of the world. We didn't really get too involved in World War I, so we weren't producing lots of things, but it all changed. So before the war, everyone was basically a farmer. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of people to make money off of. So that's what it sounds like happened to his parents. Okay, by the way, if there's any questions, interrupt and ask, okay? Let's continue with, well, it looks like Luo, after you now I see, I can't see any names. So I think it's Nader. Is that you, Nader?
Hi. Yes,
yeah,
that's
okay.
it. Hi, how are you?
All right, so Nader, you're next. Why don't you take these two paragraphs here, and after you, it's going to be Shafar, and then Yuki. Okay, so you take these two paragraphs, Nader.
One might write a book concerning our flight from the chicken farm into town. Mother and I walked the entire 8 miles. She to be sure that nothing fell from the wagon, and I to see the wonders of the world. On the seat of the wagon beside father was his greatest treasure. I will tell you of that. On a chicken farm where hundreds and even thousands of chickens come out of eggs, surprising things sometimes happen. Grotesque, grotesques are born out of eggs as out of people. The accident does not often occur, perhaps once in 1,000 pairs. A chicken is, you see, born that has 4 legs, 2 pairs of wings, 2 heads or whatnot. The things do not live. They go quickly back to the hand of their maker that has for a moment trembled. The fact that the poor little things could not live was one of the tragedies of life to father. He had some sort of notion that if he could but bring into henhood or roosterhood a 5-legged hen or a 2-headed rooster, his fortune would be made. He dreamed of taking the wonder about to county fairs and of growing rich by exhibiting it to other farm hands.
So, why does he want the 2-headed chickens to live? It sounds at first like, it's his life dream because he cares about the chickens. But what does he really want? There. Why does he want the 2-headed chickens to live, the grotesques? Is that clear?
No. One moment, please.
Take a look at this line here where it says, fortune would be made. Why would his fortune be made, do you think?
Maybe he has a belief that if they live, he will be lucky, or he can sell them. Maybe because 2-headed rooster. Maybe this is something very like a miraculous thing or something. So he can show it to in circus, or he can sell it for a big fortune.
Exactly. So he wants to go to county fairs here. He dreams of going to county fairs where
so he can show them.
Exactly, because they didn't have television back then, right? So people went outside. They used to hang out together before television and internet. So one of the things they would go to are called freak shows. If you go to the circus, the freak show had the bearded lady and the guy that could stick a pin through his arm and that kind of thing. So the county fairs had something similar, like a freak show, right? And look at this line: grotesques are born out of eggs as out of people. Earlier in the class...
What are grotesques?
Yeah, earlier in the class we talked about both what a grotesque is. A grotesque is a kind of painting from the early Renaissance. Very, very early Renaissance, like in Florence, maybe even earlier. And a grotesque was a painting, like a fresco, that was painted in a chamber that was called the cave or a grotto. So it's kind of a religious depiction, but not really a religious painting, more of a painting of an important person, but an exaggerated painting. And then grotesques spread around Europe and eventually led to Gothic art, or have an influence on Gothic art where everything is exaggerated, like the gargoyles on Notre Dame. These exaggerated characters and faces. But this writer, Sherwood Anderson, has a theory that people themselves can be grotesque. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. The chicken born with 2 heads is grotesque because it's exaggerated. And Sherwood Anderson wrote a book called The Book of Grotesques, where people tried to live by a particular code, and they exaggerated one characteristic of their personality to live by this code, and it led to disastrous results. So this line is a very important line in the story. Grotesques are born out of eggs as out of people. So we have to kind of figure out what he means by grotesques are born out of people. Are his parents grotesque in some way? Is the narrator grotesque in some way? So that's a very important symbolic line in the story. We just have to keep it in mind as we read. Okay. So
Okay.
let's go on. Let's go on to Shafar. Why don't you take the next? You'd probably do the next two actually. So starting here at any rate.
Okay, at any rate, he saved all the little motions of things that had been done on our chickens. They were preserved in alcohol and put each in its own glass bottle. They had carefully put into a box, and our journey into town it was carried on the wagon seat beside him. He drove the horse with one hand and with the other clung to the box. When we got to our destination, the box was taken down the wagons and the boat moved. All during our days as keepers of a restaurant in the town of Bidwell, Ohio. The grotesque and the little glass bottle,
Wait. The grotesques. Say that.
the grotesque
Good.
in their little glass bottles set on the top back on of counter. Mud sometimes protest, but Father wrote on the subject of his treasure. The grotesque were, he declared, valuable. People, he said, like to look at strange and wonderful things.
Okay, good. Stop for just a second. Shafar, it's really hard to hear you. I think you're having, I don't know, maybe some connection problems, but it's very, very difficult to hear you. I don't know. It's like your voice is jumping or something like that. Is anyone else having problems hearing him? Or is it just me?
I hear his voice very small, and there is a noise around his voice. So,
well, the noise is, yeah, he can't help that, but yeah. So anyway, Shafar, it's just very difficult to hear you read because you're a little bit quiet and your voice is very jumpy. So I don't know, maybe you're having an internet connection issue or something like that. So it's a little bit hard to hear you. Anyway, Shafar, let me just ask you a quick question. So, if we were looking at the car, or not the car, they're not in a car, if they're in a wagon. If we were looking at the wagon, what unusual thing would we see in the wagon? Oops, what happened to there? There, come back. What unusual thing would we see in the wagon, Shafar? In this passage, what did we discover about the wagon that we didn't know before? Shafar, are you there?
Yes, I am here, but...
Hello? What happened?
Hello?
There we are. Okay.
Yes. What's a wagon mean? I don't know.
Yeah, so what unusual thing are they bringing with them? So here, look, wagon up here in blue. So this was a long time ago. There were no, people didn't necessarily have cars, so the wagon was the vehicle pulled by horses, right? So not a car, but a horse and wagon. And his father had horses to pull the wagon to their new life. So they were carrying all their stuff to the new life, right? So Shafar, what's the unusual thing in the wagon that they're bringing with them, besides the broken baby carriage and other stuff? Did you catch that in the paragraph? What's the unusual thing, Shafar?
Let me see. Maybe.
Shafar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I don't know.
In other words, Shafar, what's in the glass bottles? What's in the glass bottles here? Because it's very important that we don't lose the paragraph before. Is that clear?
Not clear to me, maybe.
All right. Okay, so anyone, doesn't matter, class.
Little monstrous chickens on the glass bottle.
Monstrous, why?
Monstrous hens.
Why? Why monstrous?
Because they raised a lot of hens. Part of hens is invalid, disabled. So there are few. Although it's a few, but there is a hens distorted, invalid, and
Okay, not distorted and not invalid.
invalid.
But no, not invalid. Sick, you could say. Invalid is a word we don't really use that often. So you could say that they were sick in some way, and not distorted, but oh, I just lost the word. No, I just forgot the word I was going to say. Deformed. Not distorted,
Yes.
but deformed. Okay?
Deformed. In another word, grotesque.
Exactly. So,
yes.
So if you were looking in the wagon, you would see all these jars of deformed chickens with 2 heads and 4 legs.
Yes. Father gather such kind of grotesque hens.
These kind of grotesque.
They quickly die. So after they die, father collect such a corpus.
Not such a corpse. Not such. We don't use such.
These kind of corpus and put them into the alcohol, in the bottle with alcohol, and
to preserve them, right?
And keep them beside him.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more paragraphs. So Yuki, you take the next one from Did I Say?
Okay. Did I say that we embarked in the restaurant business in the town of Bitterwell, Ohio? I exaggerated a little. The town itself lay at the foot of a low hill and on the shore of a small river. The railroad did not run through the town, and the station was a mile away to the north at a place called Pickleville. There had been a cinder mill and pickle factory.
No, wait. Cider mill?
There had been a cider mill.
Cider is alcohol made from usually apple or something like that. Yeah.
Apple drink.
Right.
There had been a cider mill and a pickle factory at the station, but before the time of our coming, they had both gone out of business. In the morning and in the evening, buses came. Sorry. In the morning and the evening, buses came down to the station along the road called Turner's Pike from the hotel of the main street of Bidwell. Our going to an out-of-the-way place to embark in the restaurant business was Mother's idea. She talked of it for a year, and then one day went off and rented the empty store building opposite the railway station. It was her idea, and the restaurant would be profitable.
Profitable.
Would be profitable. Traveling men, she said, would be always waiting around to take trains out of town, and town people would come to the station to await incoming trains. They would come to the restaurant to buy pieces of pie and drink coffee. Now that I'm older, Now that I'm older, I know that she had another motive in going. She was ambitious for me. She wanted me to rise in the world, to get into the town school and become a man of the towns.
A man of the towns. I. It's a little bit strange that it's man of the towns and not man of the town. I don't know if that's a. I don't know if that's a typo or not, but
Maybe mother mother thought that any big towns is okay to raise her sons and give him a good education.
right. So she definitely has plans for him. And
Yes.
also that line, man of the towns, it's not usually said in plural. It's like man of the town or man of the city or person of the whatever, but not plural. So it almost seems like a joke. Like, if you're a man of the world, you've been to Africa, you've hunted lions, you're Ernest Hemingway. So it almost seems like a parody. The more I read this, the more I think that Sherwood Anderson has a lot of jokes in here that are very subtle. So these people are so small-minded that he can only be a man of the town. He can't be a man of the world or something like that.
I think
So, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think after describe her after not after protagonist of this story describe the mother as a person with narrow-minded. So maybe here in the description of the towns express such a feeling.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's what he's getting at. I have a feeling. Well, I think we've got time to read a little bit more before we stop. We're going to have to finish the story on Thursday, but let's see if we can get a paragraph or two more. So we're going to go back to Abraham and maybe Eric as well. I don't know if I'll have time, but let's try. Okay?
Okay.
So Abraham, pick it up here at Pickleville. By the way, would you like to live in a city in a town called Pickleville? Do you like pickles, Abraham?
I don't know what because
What's a pickle, everyone? What's a pickle? Does anyone know what a pickle is?
A pickle is it's a cucumber and vegetables only how to say like Japanese tsukemono.
Kemono. Yeah. It's in vinegar. It's been
vinegar.
Right.
Vinegar vegetable.
If you go to any Jewish delicatessen, they give you a bowl of pickles because in the old days, pickles were supposed to make you hungry. There's a famous line from Ben Franklin, the guy that helped found the United States. It said, "Hunger is the best pickle." He was advising people to be hungry instead of eating to make themselves hungry. Anyway, Pickleville, a place where they make pickles. Okay, go ahead, Abraham.
Okay. At Pickleville, father and mother worked hard as they always had done.
Wait, 1 second. Worked? Because I heard worked. Let me hear the W again. Worked.
Worked.
Yeah. You've got to work on the W's and V's because I hear you often switching back and forth between the two. So here it's worked with your W sound.
Okay. Worked hard as they always had done. At first there was a necessity of putting our place into shape to be a restaurant. That took a month. Father built a shelf on which he put tins of vegetables.
Wait. This is one of those words where we don't say every syllable. Listen to me. Vegetables. Repeat.
Vegetables.
Right. Not vegetables, but vegetables. Just like we say comfortable, not comfortable. Comfortable. Vegetable.
Vegetable.
Good.
He painted a sign on which he put his name in large red letters. Below his name was a sharp command, "Eat here." That was so seldom obeyed.
he gave an order to everyone, eat here. It's in the imperative. And apparently no one no one took him up on it. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Showcase were bought and filled with cigars and tobacco. Mother scrubbed the floor and walls of the room. I went to the school in the town and was glad to be away from the farm and from the presence of the discouraged, sad-looking chickens. Still I was not very joyous. In the evening I walked home from school along the Turner's Pike and remembered the chicken I had seen playing in the town schoolyard. A troop of little girls had gone hopping about and singing. I tried that. Down along the frozen road I went hopping solemnly on the leg. Hippie I hopped
on one leg. On one leg.
On one leg, okay. Hippie hopped to the barber shop. I sang shrilly. Then I stopped and looked doubtfully about. I was afraid of being seen in my gay mood. It must have seemed...
Not that kind of gay.
Okay.
Gay used to mean happy. Gay just means happy. Doesn't mean anything else. He wasn't in a gay mood because he was skipping. He was gay because he was happy. It still means happy, by the way.
Oh, okay. It must have seemed to me that I was doing a thing that shouldn't be done by any who, like myself, had been raised on a chicken farm where death was a daily visitor.
Right. He shouldn't be happy because he grew up on a chicken farm where all the chickens died. So every time we get a little bit of hope in the story, the narrator crushes it for us, right? He's skipping along happily, and then he has to remember that his life is kind of all about death. Look, we're going to run out of time here, so I'm just going to make a little note about where part 3 starts. So we're going to have to, let me get myself back on screen here. Okay, we're going to have to pick this up again on Thursday, where we'll complete the story, and I'd like to spend the second half of the class on Thursday talking about it. So it probably would be a good idea for you to read the rest of the story on your own, and in class we'll give everyone a chance to read one paragraph. I'll pick out important paragraphs to work on pronunciation and stuff. But in the last half an hour, I'd like to spend it talking about the story, what it means. What do you think about the idea of grotesque in the story? Who were the grotesques and how were they grotesque? And I want to hear your impression. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if the story was moving. We'll talk about all of that on Thursday in the second half, okay? I've got to go right now. Sorry, I've got to go. I've got to start the next class.
I like Sherwood Anderson the story very much. Maybe without you, I have no opportunity to read this book. So
and you'll have another opportunity.
I express thank you for you.
All right. I've got to stop right now to get to the next class. Sorry to cut you off. See you in a minute in the business class. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.